Buddhism can be seen as a religion, a spiritual tradition, a way of life, or even as an ethical framework. And all of this can be correct depending on which angle we will be looking at. Today, there are many types of Buddhism around the world. And although each of them has slightly different interpretations of the Buddha's teachings, there is one central theme across these traditions, and that is suffering. Understanding the nature of suffering and finding a way to alleviate it is a fundamental aspect of Buddhist teachings. Alleviating humanity's suffering is also seen as one of the purposes of establishing morality in our society. This will be the focus of our discussion today. What is the nature of our suffering? And what will be the Buddha's suggestion on how to live with our sufferings? Before we explore the teachings of Buddhism, let us first familiarize ourselves with its founder. Siddhartha Gautama was born into a wealthy family as a prince in present-day Nepal. He existed during the same time as Lao Tzu, Confucius, and the pre-Socratics. It was said that Siddhartha's father received a prediction that his son will either become a great ruler or a great savior of the world. To avoid the possibility of the latter, Siddhartha's father ensured that his son would only remain within the bounds of the palace and would only be exposed to good and pleasurable things. At some point, Siddhartha successfully persuaded his chariot driver to take him out of the palace and into the city. During his travel, Siddhartha saw an old man, a sick person, a corpse, and a holy or ascetic man. Collectively, these are known as the four sights. This is an eye-opening experience for Siddhartha, since before this, he'd never seen something that depicts pain, sorrow, or suffering. From then on, he decided to give up his lavish lifestyle and started his journey of understanding suffering. Siddhartha wanted to fully understand suffering. As a result, he lived an extreme ascetic life and even fasted until he was near starvation. He came to the realization that neither an excessively lavish nor an overly ascetic lifestyle is the right way to live. This led him to the idea of the middle way, a life without indulgence, but also without deprivation. It is believed that Siddhartha attained enlightenment while meditating beneath a Bodhi tree. Thereafter, he gained the title of the Buddha, meaning the enlightened or awakened one. The Buddha spent the rest of his life teaching others about how to achieve this spiritual state of enlightenment or nirvana. The first dharma or teaching of the Buddha was about the Four Noble Truths. These are insights from the Buddha's meditation and are regarded as the foundation of Buddhist philosophy. The first noble truth is dukkha, the truth of ill-being or suffering. The Buddha says that life has inevitable suffering. All of us suffer to some extent, and we have to recognize it. To acknowledge the problem is the first step of solving it. The second noble truth is samudaya, the truth of the cause of suffering. Once we acknowledge that our suffering is there, we have to look deeply to see its origins. All of our sufferings are caused by something, and it is imperative for us to identify its causes so we can have a better understanding on how to manage it. The third noble truth is nirodha, the truth of the cessation of suffering. The Buddha tells us that it is possible to end our sufferings. And this can be done through the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path. This is the truth of the path to the cessation of suffering, or magga. These four noble truths are interconnected. To understand our suffering, we have to understand its cause, its end, and the path or way to end it. This leads us to the Noble Eightfold Path. Buddhist ethics are not rules or laws for us to strictly follow. Rather, we must look at it as a guide of practices for attaining enlightenment. Because all eight folds of the path are linked to each other, we cannot practice just one. To practice is to practice all eight in moderation. Within the context of the Eightfold Path, when we speak of the word right, we do not necessarily mean that there is a correct or wrong way of doing things. We use the word right to refer to the wise or skillful ways of practicing the teachings. Right view involves looking deeply at our perceptions. It is a practice to widen our understanding of the nature of reality, including the Four Noble Truths and the impermanence of all things. The Buddha said that most of our suffering comes from our wrong perceptions. This is usually because we only look at one point of view or because we are too attached to a certain perspective. For example, in this world, we perceive of birth and death, existence and non-existence. Take a look at this lighter. When we look at the flame, we say that it is existing. When it's gone, we say that it is non-existent. But is that really the case? Suppose we're looking at a particular cloud. When we're seeing it, we say that it is there. It is existing. Once we no longer see it, we say that it is gone. It's non-existent. But is it really gone? Or did it just transform into other forms of existence? Looking deeply into the nature of things and not clinging or being attached to certain views may just lead us to a better way of understanding reality. Right intention refers to cultivating kind and compassionate intentions and not having ill will towards others. Right view and right intention help us in our cultivation of wisdom. The next of the Eightfold Paths is right speech. This entails speaking truthfully, kindly, and in ways that do not harm others. There are four aspects of a right speech: avoiding lying, avoiding slander, avoiding harsh speech, and avoiding idle talk. We must keep in mind that whenever we speak, we must use our words to bring peace. Right action pertains to our respect for life and our commitment to do no harm. It also involves maintaining compassionate and harmonious relationships. Right livelihood involves making a living in a way that is honest and does not cause harm to oneself or others. These three folds, right speech, right action, and right livelihood, all serve as a guide for our ethical conducts. Right effort pertains to the controlled, sustained, enthusiastic, and cheerful determination to attain nirvana. Consistency is important when we are training. There may be challenges in our path to awakening, and sometimes we may find it difficult to practice. During these times, we must do our best to maintain a right effort. Right mindfulness deals with the development of a clear awareness of our thoughts, feelings, sensations, and actions in the present moment. It is about being fully present and attentive to what is happening within and around oneself. It can be difficult to be fully present. Many of us think about the past or the future during our waking moments. In doing so, we are not being fully present. Our body is in one place while our mind is somewhere else. When we're not fully aware of what we're presently doing, it affects the quality of our views, our actions, and our speech. Life only happens in the present moment, which is why if we're spending our present thinking about the past or the future, it will be difficult to experience the joys of life. Having the right mindfulness is crucial in practicing the rest of the folds of the Eightfold Path. We can cultivate mindfulness through the practice of right concentration. This involves training the mind to be steady and undistracted. We can do so by practicing meditation. Right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration aid us in the development of the mind. Practicing the Eightfold Path is a lifelong endeavor. Practitioners work towards developing these qualities in a gradual and balanced manner. It provides a comprehensive framework for leading a life of ethical conduct, mental clarity, and spiritual insight, ultimately leading us to liberation from the cycle of suffering. This liberation or enlightenment is called nirvana. It is not a place, but a way of being. Nirvana is a word which literally means to blow out or extinguish. It is a transcendent state in which there is neither suffering, desire, nor sense of self. This does not mean that we will no longer experience suffering in life. Keep in mind that as long as we're existing, suffering is inevitable. However, if we become skillful with our practice, we can have this peace and solidity amidst our suffering. Thich Nhat Hanh, a Zen Buddhist monk, once said, "If you know how to make good use of suffering, you can produce happiness." He takes the lotus flower as an example. The lotus flower is a common symbol in Buddhism. A flower represents something beautiful, something pleasant. But in order for the lotus to grow, it needs the mud, something we usually consider as dirty or unpleasant. We can look at our sufferings in this way. If we know how to make good use of the mud, we can grow a beautiful lotus. If we know how to make good use of suffering, we can create happiness. We need some suffering in order to create happiness. But we already have enough suffering. We no longer need to create more. We are encouraged to practice the Eightfold Path to attain nirvana. And perhaps nirvana is knowing how to suffer, how to transform our sufferings, and how to refrain from causing suffering to others.